Welcome back to Network Africa. Former South African President Jacob Zuma is in danger of losing his controversial rural home in Nkandla after failing to keep up with loan repayments. Back in 2016, Mr. Zuma was told by the Constitutional Court that he had breached the Constitution by not paying back some of the $23 million that the government spent on upgrading his private home. To pay the money back, Mr. Zuma reportedly borrowed $500,000 from the VBS Bank, but the court papers relating to the liquidation of VBS show that the former president failed to keep up with the loan repayments. He's currently $38,000 in arrears. The VBS liquidators want Mr. Zuma to pay up, and if he fails, they could seize his Nkandla homestead. The former president has until Saturday to respond. Families of those who died in the Ethiopian Airlines mishap in March have held an emotional vigil outside the Department of Transportation 6 months after the plane crashed into farmland outside the capital, Addis Ababa. Holding pictures of those they lost in the crash, family members spoke with grief of the challenge of moving on without their loved ones. Relatives of some victims of Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302 also met with U.S. Transportation Secretary Elaine Chao for about 2 hours earlier on Tuesday. The U.S. Congress is preparing to call Boeing executives to testify on the 2 fatal Boeing 737 MAX crashes that led to the plane's grounding in March.
And this day is to remember those we lost, to remember Sammy and my daughter, remember Paul's family. That's the primary purpose of this day. But we as families are gathered and we're in communication increasingly together for several reasons. Number one, we heal better by talking to each other. Number two, we want to prevent a third crash.
While all your lives moved on for the last 6 months, our lives, the lives of the families of the victims, my life has not moved an inch. You've gone on with your lives, with your daily activities. I'm not able to go on with my life. I don't know how to live this life anymore.
Really touching tributes there to the victims of the crash. Our thoughts and prayers are with the families. South Sudan's President Salva Kiir and rebel leader Riek Machar have agreed to form a transitional government by November 12th. That's according to Information Minister Michael Makue-Lueth, who spoke to reporters in the capital, Juba. President Kiir and Mr. Machar signed a pact a year ago to end a civil war that has killed hundreds of thousands of people, displaced a third of the population, and wrecked the economy. The rollout of the last year's record, which called for a unity government, has been delayed because the government says it does not have enough money to fund disarmament and the integration of all the armed factions. Thousands of displaced families and individuals are stranded at shelters in Libya's Tripoli city, enduring poor living conditions as a military offensive on Tripoli by Khalifa Haftar's Libyan National Army enters its 6th month. According to the UN Refugee Agency, more than 268,000 Libyans are internally displaced, some from fighting in 2014 to 2017 in Libya's second city, Benghazi, where forces loyal to Haftar eventually took control.
After fleeing an advance by Eastern-based forces on Tripoli, 80-year-old Mabrouka Al-Tuwati and her daughter spent days sleeping rough in the Libyan capital. Now they are in a shelter where sheets cover broken windows and 2 desks serve as a kitchen. As a military offensive on Tripoli by Khalifa Haftar's Libyan National Army enters its 6th month, the 2 women are among an estimated 120,000 displaced by the latest escalation of violence in the oil-rich nation of 6 million.
My daughter and I moved from streets to streets to find a place and took naps on the trees. We experienced torment unlike anything we ever saw before, and we went roaming looking for a house, but to no avail. We had relatives who let us stay with them at night, but in the morning we're out again. roaming the streets.
Some of the displaced use public gardens or erect tents by Tripoli's Mediterranean seafront. Others have found themselves in shelters that lack even basic provisions or drinking water.
I am helpless. We are tired. It's been 6 months and we've been like this. To be honest, only God knows how we are living, and winter is approaching and we do not know what to do. The place, as you can see, is small. We need a bathroom, a shower, a place to eat, drink and sleep. There are children.
Conditions at shelters that have sprung up across Tripoli are tough, and displaced families living in cramped huts say they have seen no sign of the aid. Libya began to splinter in 2011 when a NATO-backed uprising toppled Muammar Gaddafi after more than 4 decades in power. Since 2014, it has been split between rival camps based in Tripoli and the east.
Well, there is some light at the end of the tunnel, especially as Malta has agreed to let 5 Tunisian migrants stranded on the migrants rescue ship Alan Kurdi to disembark after 2 European Union countries agreed to take them in. The 5 young men were part of a group of 13 rescued off Tunisia at the end of August. 8 of them have already been transferred to Malta for medical reasons, with some having attempted suicide. The rescue vessel is operated by the German NGO CI and was named after a drowned Syrian boy who died in 2015 while trying to reach Europe with his family.
We just finished our last disembarkation for the remaining 5 young men on board, and for me it's a very happy and lucky moment because a rescue operation is only finished when we have all rescued people on a safe place, and despite the reaction of Malta's government, we have all of them back and reunited with their friends. After all, I thank the crew of Alan Kurdi that they did a very good job, and we will continue rescuing people from drowning.
The International Committee of the Red Cross says Burkina Faso has been slipping into violence. According to the group, in less than a year, the number of displaced people has increased 5-fold in August. More than 500,000 people in the country risk losing access to health care as increased violence continues to cause more people to flee.
Once a pocket of relative calm in the Sahel, Burkina Faso has suffered a homegrown insurgency for the past 3 years, amplified by a spillover of jihadist violence and criminality from its chaotic neighbor, Mali. According to the ICRC, the number of displaced persons increased from 50,000 last December to 270,000 in August in less than a year. When Alidu Sawadogo's elderly mother fell ill, he faced a long and dangerous journey to get treatment for her.
When she collapsed, a friend called me. By the time I arrived, she was already unconscious. I decided to take her to the health center, and luckily, someone who had a motorcycle helped me. Because of the violence, many people who are sick wait at home and die.
Dr. Bertrand Dibley in Basalogo says the few healthcare centers that have remained open are struggling to meet the needs of the people and to stay safe themselves. The ICRC President Peter Moura expressed his concern at the multiple challenges facing Burkina Faso's people. Across the country, the rise in insecurity has forced over 100 health centers to close or to limit their work.
That's Network Africa for you. Thanks for watching. I am Amarachi Ubani.